What's up, folks? Welcome back to TacticalTortoise. My name is Trevi, and it's time for another datasheet deep dive. This is an exciting one because we are talking about a brand new datasheet for Warhammer 40k. One that was just kind of unceremoniously dumped onto Warhammer community for the Orc faction. These are the new kill team for Orcs, the Orc Breaka Boys. As always with these videos, we're gonna go into a deep dive into this datasheet, its abilities and keywords, as well as combos you can use both with characters in the faction, detachments you can use the unit alongside, and talk about how much damage you can expect from these guys once they are fully comboed out. I want to throw a big shout out as well to everybody who supports the channel, either over on Patreon at patreon.com/TacticalTortoise, or folks who support over on a YouTube channel membership. All of you people are amazing, and please help support the channel yourself by liking the video, subscribing, and doing all that YouTube algorithm nonsense. So with that, let's dive in and talk about these Breaka Boys. Now, on face value, the top line profile of the Breaka Boys is pretty similar to something like an Orc Knob. They come in at an average movement of 6, but that tanky Orc defensive profile of 5 toughness, and in this case 2 wounds, which does make them very similar to a Knob, with a 4+ armor save. They also have a relatively poor leadership characteristic of 7 and OC value of only 1. Where things get pretty crazy though are their abilities and their attached weapons. In terms of abilities, they are affected by the WA like all other Orc units. They also come with the Trophy Hunter's ability. This is a unique ability that allows them to permanently reroll charge rolls. There's no requirements for targets. It doesn't matter whether or not your WA is active. They will just reroll their charges, which is phenomenal. They also have 2 bomb squigs assigned to the unit, twice per battle after they end a normal move. That's an important rider because they can't do it after they advance. Unfortunately, that does mean that it might be tough to use all the bomb squigs for this unit because they're likely going to be being delivered by a transport or maybe out of reserve, then advancing on the WA turn to get into your opponent's meaty monsters or vehicles. So you will likely not be able to use bomb squigs before the unit explodes, but in some instances, you're going to be able to maneuver them around the table enough that you can get those 2 bomb squigs off. When you do use them, you select an enemy unit within 12. Fortunately, you don't have to see the enemy unit. The squigs will just home in by themselves, so you can use this as a little bit of indirect fire if you don't have these guys being delivered by a transport. When you unleash a bomb squig, you select an enemy unit within that 12 inches, roll a d6. On a 2+, the enemy suffers d3 mortal wounds. This is not the only unit to have bomb squigs, obviously. We see them plenty of times in other Orc datasheets. These guys have 2 of them, which is great, and it's a nice little tool in the toolbox to have for these guys, if not transformative to the datasheet. What is, however, are their weapon selections, because they are absolutely insane. I should mention as well that this unit always comes in a composition of 6 models. All the time, you get 1 boss knob and 5 regular Breaka Boys. That's always what they have. You cannot expand the unit or take them in a smaller quantity. They always have 6. That's probably fine, however, because it puts them in this real happy medium between the big Orc bricks like 10 knobs or 20 boys, or the smaller units like 2 or 3 mega knobs or just 5 Orc knobs. First off, we have a ranged weapon for the boss knob in the unit. He gets a rocket pistol, a strength 9 AP2 3 damage pistol attack that fires at a 12-inch range. This is just fine to have. Occasionally they will be stuck in melee and he'll be able to use it in melee because it has the pistol keyword. Otherwise, it only has a 5+ ballistic skill and mediocre strength and AP. Usually you're going to be delivering these guys into vehicles, so oftentimes it's going to flub either the saving throw or the wound roll, or most likely the hit roll. So this is just a nice inclusion, but not anything to write home about. However, their melee attacks are really where things get absolutely insane. He also has a choppa that he can use as an anti-infantry option if he wants one. However, the big thing here is that the entire unit, including the knob, are equipped with smash hammers. You are going to be able to cycle out 2 smash hammers for specialist weapons, so we're going to assume that you have 4 smash hammers in the unit. These smash hammers are pretty cool. They do have a low attack volume, only 2 attacks each base. However, they have a weapon skill 3, so better than a lot of the other 2-handed weapons that Orcs have otherwise, where we see them come in at a lower weapon skill. And they have a pretty solid profile, strength 6, AP 2 for 3 flat damage. Now that strength 6 may seem pretty reasonable. However, they also have anti-monster, anti-vehicle 4. So they're going to critically wound against monsters and vehicles on a 4+. That means the wound is always successful, which means largely when these guys are attacking monsters and vehicles, which is their preferred target, it doesn't matter what their toughness is. Who cares? You're almost always going to wound on 4s unless you're attacking something like a crisis battlesuit, in which case you may wound on a lower number. Most of the time, however, you're looking for 4s to wound, and that makes them good into basically any monster or vehicle target in the game. In addition, we also get some incredibly spicy special weapons. One model in the unit can equip a Knuckle Buster. This replaces their Smash Hammer and brings them a little bit more of a well-rounded profile. A 5 attack profile at Strength 5 and AP 1, so slightly lower on the Strength and AP and only 1 damage instead of 3. However, it comes with Twin Linked. These retain Anti-Monster, Anti-Vehicle 4, which means that you're looking for 4s and re-rolling, so 75% of your successful hits will convert against any toughness value of monsters and vehicles and put an AP 1 hit on them. That's pretty good. That means that it is at least equivalent to the Smash Hammer. I don't think its damage is quite as good into the big high save characteristic stuff. Obviously, every attack you convert is 1/3 as much damage. However, it gives the unit more utility into lighter targets, which is solid. The Tank Hammer is exactly the same as the Smash Hammer, except it has devastating wounds and hazardous. So there is a chance you blow yourself up while using it, which is hilarious, but you'll probably want to use it anyway because if it rolls that 4+ against monsters and vehicles, they'll immediately take 3 mortal wounds. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Instead, collect somewhere between 6 and 9 automatic damage directly onto your hull. The Tank Hammer is lethally terrifying to especially high save characteristic monsters and vehicles. So that gives us the picture of this unit. They are basically knobs with upside. They're essentially a small knob unit with 6 models instead of 5. However, they trade their more well-rounded, either Big Choppas or Power Claw attacks for dedicated anti-vehicle attacks. And the huge thing that we have to remember here is that wah mechanic that orcs have access to, which just got buffed actually yesterday at the time of recording this video by being able to be used in the orc player's command phase. That's huge. The wah improves the attack characteristic of your melee weapons by 1 and gives the unit access to advance and charge. So it's going to speed them up. They can advance, charge, reroll their charge roll for free. Once they get into melee, they are basically adding somewhere around 25 to 30% additional damage because their low attack volume gets a disproportionate buff from that extra attack. The fact that their weapons are very low volume but high impact means that any effects that can generate additional attacks or additional hits from them are going to be so incredible. And I think these guys really want to commit on the wah turn. They do so much damage when they're buffed by the wah. And as we move on to faction synergies, we can talk about ways to generate those additional attacks. Now, first off, I want to talk about character attachments. The back of the datasheet has a clause for attaching to these guys. They are considered to be a Boyz unit for the purposes of attaching. So if you can attach to a Boyz unit, you can attach to Breaka Boyz instead. That means that they have a pretty wide access to a lot of different units. However, given the fact that they aren't actually Boyz, a lot of synergies don't really work quite well for them. They, for example, are not really affected by Green Tide, being a small unit and not actually a Boyz unit. They're also not knobs, so in Bully Boys, for example, you can't use any of the Bully Boys synergies on them. However, as we go down the list, we have some pretty sweet options. The first one, and maybe the least exciting, is the mech. He can attach into the unit to give them the mech keyword. That will come into play once we start talking about using these guys in Dread Mob, although he doesn't actually do anything to really buff the unit himself. He does bring a kill saw attack, though, so it helps them at cracking through vehicles, which is sort of nice. I didn't record it initially, but the same also goes for the big mech who can join into the unit. He gives reroll advance rolls and a reroll, I guess, on your rocket attack if you really care about that. But again, not a huge combination with these guys. You could also attach a Pain Boy to make them slightly tankier, although given the fact that the unit is only 6 models, I think a lot of times they'll just die, so he's not going to get the ability to regenerate any models to the unit, so that one's not quite as exciting either. Weird Boys also have interesting synergy. Because the unit automatically rerolls its charge roll, you can jump them and then have like a reasonable chance at making a charge out of Deep Strike, which is pretty cool. Although I think it kind of goes without saying here that the War Boss is the big one. War Bosses give you +1 to hit while they're attached, so all of these low volume attacks are going from hitting on 3s to hitting on 2s. That's enormous. He also brings you a ton of pretty high value attacks if he's rocking his Power Claw, another between 4 and 9 Strength 10 AP 2 damage attacks, thanks to getting additional attacks from the Wah. And again, these guys really want to be committing on that Wog turn, in addition to his attack squig, but that +1 to hit is really why you're bringing him. All of those low volume weapon skill 3 attacks that are super duper high value, thanks to their anti-vehicle, are going to be benefited with basically half as large a chance to miss. So this guy is basically the perfect attachment to this unit. Now, war bosses are at high demand in orc armies, hence the reason they just actually got nerfed in the last update. So whether or not you want a war boss for this unit is going to be the open question. I do think Breaka Boyz and a war boss are a pretty good slot into many orc armies if you are having trouble with these high toughness monsters or vehicles. You can basically replace a unit of knobs with a war boss with the Breaka Boyz and a war boss and have a more dedicated unit rather than the more well-rounded unit that knobs tend to be. Now, let's talk about buffing them using detachments. Many detachments have some very basic buffs for units like the Breaka Boyz. However, they're good for a lot of different units, and this unit basically being an update of a Boyz squad means that they have a lot available to them. Speed Freaks, for example, can deliver them faster with the faster than use enhancement, allowing them to disembark a moving vehicle and then charge. Dread Mob allows you to attach a mech to them in order to hit the red button. That can give you access to things like sustained hits or lethal hits on your attacks. Again, any access to sustained hits is huge. Warhorde is a huge one here because you're getting sustained hits from that Warhorde effect, and that's generating you additional hits, meaning that you're getting more of those super high value anti-vehicle attacks. Absolutely, absolutely phenomenal, especially once you start buffing them up with your stratagems and potentially your enhancements from that detachment. The big one here, in my opinion, though, is Bully Boys. If you have a war boss attached into the unit, they become a war boss unit, so they get affected by the second Bully Boys extra Wog, and that gives you more opportunities to deliver these guys in optimal conditions. They really want to be hitting your target when you are on that Wog turn, so you're getting all those extra attacks, that extra huge 3 damage swings into your opponent, having an entire extra battle round of that, especially so that your army can commit on your normal Wog turn and clear out your opponent's screen so that you can then deliver on the next battle round the Breaka Boyz into the heart of your opponent's army and get at their vehicles. That's exactly what you want to be doing, and I think that is the perfect place for a unit like this. Now let's talk about some damage values, because the average damage from this unit is absolutely insane. Now, I'm going to be assuming that we have a couple of bonuses active here while I'm talking about the expected damage from a Breaka Boyz unit. I'm going to be assuming that we are benefiting from a +1 to hit effect. That could either be sustained hits, which is essentially sort of mathematically equivalent to +1 to hit in many situations, which you would get if you were in a Warhorde detachment, or you would get from attaching a mech and hitting the red button in a Dread Mob detachment. You can also get it from attaching a War Boss, and we'll also math out how much damage we get from the unit with a War Boss attached in. Now, the average damage against a toughness 6 or higher vehicle that the unit is going to be wounding automatically on force, thanks to anti-vehicle, with a 3+ save and no defensive abilities additional to them, is 15. These guys can hit most vehicles in the game for a casual 15 damage with essentially only 1-ish buffs active on them. You just need to get them that hit bonus or additional hits from sustains and the Wog turn. That means that they will kill basically 80 to 90% of vehicles in 40k immediately on the charge, no questions asked, and oftentimes will overkill them. That's absolutely nuts. With those same buffs active, if they go into a heavier target like a Land Raider, they still average 12 damage. These guys will most of the way kill an unbuffed Land Raider just on the Wog turn with some help. If you have any shooting, you have some kill rigs around, or you have a shock attack gun big mech to put a laser cannon into that Land Raider before they go in, they could easily handle a wounded heavy vehicle all by themselves with just this one unit. If you start adding the damage expected from a War Boss attached into the unit as well, that goes absolutely crazy. They will do an additional between 3 and 7 damage, depending on the toughness of the target. With the War Boss's Power Claw attack and their bonus 4 attacks, if the Wog is active alongside their little attack squig, we can't forget about that guy, this guy pulls your average damage into a toughness 6, 3+ save vehicle to 22. they'll do 22 damage to anything that the war boss is wounding on 3s. Once you start talking about that Land Raider equivalent, his damage does drop significantly because he is then wounding on 5s, which is unfortunate. However, that still gets you to 15 damage, almost one-shotting a Land Raider equivalent with just the unit and the character. If you have any enhancements on the character, or if you've just been able to do a normal move and you've hit a bomb squig into that vehicle, you can one-shot a Land Raider with this unit. No questions asked. These Breaka boys are absolutely insane, and while you can potentially stack defensive buffs on the target to the point that they are difficult for the Breaka boys to get through, I do think that the efficiency of this unit definitely warrants their consideration in a lot of orc armies, especially, as I said before, orc armies that are struggling dealing with this super high toughness. So with that, that's all I have to say about Breaka boys. Let me know down in the comments section what you think about this new unit and the direction that these kill teams are going, being added into Warhammer 40,000. Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. Thanks as well for supporting Tactical Tortoise, either over on Patreon at patreon.com/TacticalTortoise, YouTube channel members, and Twitch subscribers. All you people are amazing, and I love you. Remember to keep it classy, folks, and have happy wargaming.